Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Dennis Prager Show. What's the word? Gaslight? People tell you what the opposite of what you've actually seen. Is that the working definition of gaslighting? That's what we lived through. Donald Trump was called divisive, among other things, for 4 years. Dictator, divisive. We've had no dictator or divisive president in my lifetime. Indeed, I think in the probably since Lincoln, I guess you could say Lincoln was divisive because he fought the South, but it was a good divisiveness. But we've had nothing like Biden. I periodically call him President Biden, and if he walked into a room, I would stand up because I honor the presidency, but he's a disgrace to it. The man's a mean man, in case you didn't pick up on that. If you don't pick up on that, it means you don't have good antennae for meanness or you're mean. Those are the two possibilities. Of course, you could say the same. People do. Oh, if you don't pick up on what a lowlife Donald Trump is, then you don't have good antennae or you're unaware, or you're a lowlife. I guess that would be the rejoinder of somebody on the left. But I don't know anybody on the right who went around saying that he was a fine human being. What we said was he did a fantastic job for this country. Best president in my lifetime, without question, in terms of what good he did. Is he personally mean? I don't know. I have heard from when I went to the Trump Hotel and spoke to waiters there, they would tell me how much he asked about their families when he came in. And this was a black man in particular that I talked to, and he was a Democrat. He said he was quite surprised how sweet the president was. But anyway, the fact that Joe Biden is a crook and a liar is not the primary problem. It's what is that he's a demagogue as president. You're either for Jefferson Davis or you're for this bill. I'm going to play you, if it's really critical, take you 5 minutes of your life. You owe it to the country to watch this video. Hans von Spakovsky of the Heritage Foundation made a video for a PragerU on the voting rights bill. So I'm going to play it for you because you need to know the evil that is involved in calling what the Republicans are doing voter suppression. Here goes.
There are a lot of partisan political issues out there, but election integrity shouldn't be one of them. What could be more basic to the very concept of representative government than having citizens trust that an election, whether it be for president or dog catcher, was fairly won or fairly lost? Yet in the recent past, this issue has become very contentious. For purposes of our discussion here, let's put aside any feelings we might have regarding a specific election. Here's the conflict. One side is primarily concerned that all votes are legitimately cast. That is, each vote can be traced to the person voting. The other side is primarily concerned that as many people as possible have the opportunity to vote. Now, a very obvious question arises. Why are these two concerns incompatible? Well, the answer is they are not. We should be able to both verify a vote.
What happened here? Guys, do you know anything? You know what happened?
And make it easy to vote at the same time. Yes, even in politics, it should be possible to walk and chew gum simultaneously. Let's look to see how Georgia, where there's been much controversy over voting, has addressed this issue. First concern, voter ID. The recent Georgia voter reform law requires voters to provide an ID to receive an absentee ballot. Since 2008, the state has required a voter to show a government-issued photo ID when he or she votes in person. To require the same level of security for absentee voting seems to make perfect sense. In fact, one wonders why this wasn't addressed sooner. There's simply no good evidence that possessing an ID presents a hardship to voting. Have you ever met anyone who didn't have an ID? Anyone? When a federal judge threw out the ACLU-led lawsuit against Georgia's in-person voter ID law, he noted that in 2 years of litigation, the challengers could not produce a single resident of the state unable to vote because of the new ID requirement. But wait, as they say in TV ads, there's more. The new law says you can satisfy the voter ID requirement with a copy of a current utility bill, bank statement, government check, paycheck, or other government document that shows the name and address of the would-be voter. It's worth noting that the language on voter IDs for absentee ballots is identical to the language in the federal Help America Vote Act of 2002, which passed the U.S. Senate by a vote of 92 to 2. The yes votes included then-Senator Joe Biden bill. Let's move on to the second concern, making voting easy. The charge against Georgia's new voting law is that it prohibits voters from access to water while they wait in line. One has to admit that sounds harsh. But if we dig a little deeper, we find that like most other states, Georgia prohibits electioneering within 150 feet of a polling place or within 25 feet of any voters waiting in line to vote. The new law simply added that within such distances, no one can give, offer to give, or participate in the giving of any money or gift, including, but not limited to, food and drink to any elector. In other words, a candidate, his supporters, or an activist group can't show up in a polling place with a truckload of Happy Meals and start handing them out to voters standing in line. The clear intent here is to prevent operatives from any party from unduly influencing voters with money or gifts, including food and drink. The idea that Georgia is somehow doing something nefarious by preventing gift giving at the polls is, to put it mildly, bizarre, especially considering that this is a standard practice, as it should be, in most other states, including New York and New Jersey. By the way, the law says it's okay for poll officials to make self-service water from an unattended receptacle available to an elector waiting in line. And of course, you can bring a bottle of water with you if you're worried that you're going to die of thirst waiting to vote. But wait, there's more. The state added additional weekend voting days for those who want to vote early. To call these reforms the new Jim Crow, as some have done, or an example of voter suppression is simply not true. In fact, it's so far from the truth, it makes one wonder about the accuser's motives. But more than anything, it is an insult to the people who really did suffer from the restrictive voting laws of the past. But those days are behind. The numbers prove it. Georgia has seen record levels of voter registration and turnout in recent elections, including 2020. That includes blacks and Hispanics, and that's been the trend for a decade. Anybody who wants to vote can vote. Introducing a few safeguards to build confidence that only legal votes are cast and counted just seems to make common sense. So why all the controversy? I'm Hans von Spakovsky, Senior Legal Fellow at the Heritage Foundation for Prager University.
That's it. That's what makes you Bull Connor, was it the sheriff or the police chief who set dogs on demonstrators for civil rights. So it makes you Jefferson Davis, the leader of the Confederacy, if you want voter ID. The demagoguery is despicable. But my assumption is fewer and fewer Americans, or let me put it this way, more and more Americans are catching on to the evil of the Democratic Party and the left. I will be reading to you this show from, of all places, Politico, of a woman on the left in San Francisco who has gone through self-examination and realized that the Democratic Party is bad. And it came, in her case, from the deliberate hurting of children. We'll be back.
Streaming on Salem Now.
We understand that a plane has crashed into...
The people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Biggest and most costly manhunt in U.S. history.
United States killed Osama bin Laden.
There are reports surfacing that Al-Qaeda has placed a $50,000 US bounty on the heads of any U.S. Navy SEALs.
Nobody's going to survive that. There's nobody in that.
This is the single largest loss of life in Afghanistan in a single incident.
Most of them are U.S. Navy SEALs.
We discovered bullets in the bodies of the Navy SEALs. The military threw them away.
More likely than not, that supports a shootout on board.
Anybody out there, we have a fallen angel.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dream cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Hi, everybody. Dennis Prager here. And the terrible part of the two terrible parts of what the Democrats are doing, morally terrible. One is, if you believe in voter ID and common sense things like that, you're for Jim Crow 2.0. And the other is the national takeover of elections. It will be taken out of the hands of states. Here's a general rule. The more centralized power is, the more corruption in a society and the less freedom in a society. There is no exception to that rule on earth. That is why Britain left the European Union, because Brussels had too much power. This country was not set up to have the federal government run what the states can run. This is an attempt at suppressing liberty. If that's not obvious to you, it is because you believe in a larger and larger and larger and larger central government. That is no longer the United States, it's just America. All right, Park Ridge, Illinois. Bob, hello.
Hello, thank you for taking my call. I have to say, Mr. Prager, you know, for a long time you've said you're agnostic about whether or not the election was stolen from Donald Trump, and 14 months after Election Day, you still somehow don't seem willing to accept the fact that you just lost. And as long as you continue to accommodate Trump's endless lies about vote fraud, it is impossible for me to take you seriously when you claim to be an advocate for election integrity and an opponent of demagoguery.
Okay, I'm sorry you can't take me seriously. I am. I've broadcast for 40 years. I've earned a reputation for being a serious thinker. If you know how much was done by Democrats prior to the election, that $400 million was given by Mark Zuckerberg to influence the election alone, how much was done in this country by the media in particular to support the election of Joe Biden, how many forces were arraigned, and you find that acceptable, means that we differ.
You're not speaking to my point. What I said was 14 months later, there is zero evidence of the fraud that Trump claimed.
So
you don't have any evidence either.
I never said that I believed that he was not elected. I said that there are too many anomalies to say without question that he was elected. I never said that President Biden is not the president. What do you want me to do? What would you like me to do? Grovel before you and say, gee, the fact that every, 19 counties that are swing counties that determine elections, 18 went for Donald Trump. Gee, what an anomaly. Gee, it's the first time in history that a sitting president got more votes than he did the first time and lost. Gee, it's just a coincidence. I find these things to be worthy of respect. I treat Biden as president. I never said otherwise. I condemned the January 6th events as they took place. What would you like me to do?
But saying it's an anomaly still doesn't prove any fraud.
You're right. That's correct. So you and I agree. Isn't that shocking? It must shock you. You're right. It doesn't prove fraud, nor did I ever say that it did.
So when Trump continues to claim that there was massive fraud 14 months later with no evidence, he's lying, right?
No. He's not lying, but because, as I said, I'm agnostic. But I don't claim what he claims. That is correct. I do not claim the certitude.
So how can a person who claims to advocate for the truth continue to say they are agnostic on a subject when 14 months have passed with zero evidence to support the lie?
Because there are many cases where there's a crime that took place. There is no proof, but there is such overwhelming circumstantial evidence that you're agnostic. You just don't know who did it. There's no DNA. There's no photograph of a guy shooting somebody or stabbing somebody. It's like that. I think the Democrats. Let me ask you a question. Do you think it would be? Do you think that Donald Trump is a fascist?
Not exactly.
Okay, the Democrats do. There's no Democrat in Congress that has not said that Donald Trump is a fascist. Have you condemned that?
Wait, I'm sorry. Say that again?
Have you condemned the universal calling of Donald Trump a fascist and dictator among Democrats? You probably didn't.
I do not think.
Okay, fine.
I reject the assertion. I reject your assertion that Democrats are unanimously calling Donald Trump a fascist.
Okay, then do you know a single Democrat? And I'm not trying to trap you. I'm trying to make a point here that the questions you pose to me could be posed to you. But more important than that, whether or not there is a single Democrat who has not called Donald Trump a fascist or a dictator, is this. Since the overwhelming majority believe that, and if you believed that, would you think it was immoral to cheat in the election? If you were a vote counter, would you say it's immoral to stop a fascist from being president?
I've seen no evidence that happened.
Okay, you're not. We've talked about the evidence, and I have agreed with you. So let me just ask you.
Can I ask you a question?
No. Let me make my point because you didn't answer my question. So I'll answer my question. I would cheat to stop a fascist from being president. In other words, given the fact that every Democrat I know of in office believes that stopping Donald Trump from being reelected is to prevent a dictator and a fascist from taking over, any opportunity any of them would have to cheat, I think they would take. And if they didn't, they are totally inconsistent with their moral values. To stop a fascist, you cheat. I would.
Okay, but we don't convict people of crimes.
You're right. Nobody's convicted. That's correct.
We convict people. We assess criminality based on evidence, not the belief.
That's right. I said to you. I said there's no proof. I said to you, but there was so much circumstantial evidence, and the way to get there was corrupt. Look, I gave you a lot of time. I appreciate the civility with which you spoke. What can I say? I don't know what happened on Election Day. And since no judge has even allowed for the presentation of evidence, it's impossible to say there's no evidence. If there's no trial, if there's no public accommodation to the idea that there might have been corruption, how do I know there's no proof? I think it would have been a service to the country, truly a service to the country now and for the foreseeable future, to have had those who claim proof to show it in court. We'll be back.
Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
human trafficking bar.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Man, I miss my father, and I want him to be here with me, but he's not.
We all had something in common. A lot of us were miserable. We had no fathers in our lives.
This is how I began the life of crime. I desired to have a father who would tell me that what I did was wrong.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Hi, everybody. Dennis Prager here. It was an important call, the last call, and I want to thank him for calling. The argument that there was no evidence, or no proof, that was the argument, no proof, is the statement is true. I do not have proof of fraudulent election results in the last election. I have vast numbers of anomalies that I'd like addressed. When you have anomalies and you have moral intent, it's a powerful combination. There is no reason a Democrat who thinks that Donald Trump was a fascist or a dictator, there's no reason, there's no justification not to cheat. As I've said over and over, I would. If I thought I would prevent a fascist from being president of the United States by cheating, of course I would cheat. Everything in life has moral gradations. Wouldn't it have been nice if German vote counters in 1932 had cheated? Right? I mean, you can't have it both ways. You can't say he's a fascist, but I'll do nothing to stop him from being elected. Nothing illegal. Illegal is not the same as immoral, right? I mean, that's obvious. It was illegal to hide a Jew, but it was moral to hide a Jew during the Holocaust. So, legality and morality are not identical. They're frequently in opposition. The laws against the unvaccinated are legal, but they're immoral. And they're not science-based. I will read to you from a major epidemiologist in Israel who has condemned the entire health apparatus. It's a gutsy thing to do. He's at Tel Aviv University. That's the most, that and Hebrew University, the two most prestigious universities of Israel, which is a center of intellectual growth, as you know. So many inventions come out of Israel. I think they have more patents than any country but the United States. And it's a country of, what is it? How many people live there? 6 million? 7 million? So it's serious. By the way, there was no proof that the Trump Russia collusion story was a lie. We didn't have proof. Yet for 2 years we were lied to by the media. The media lie on behalf of the left. That's all they do. That is their job, is to lie on behalf of the left. If they could tell the truth on behalf of the left, they do that too. They don't only lie, but they will lie regularly, like they did the Russia collusion story, and lost no left-wing readers or viewers. It's an amazing thing. They don't care. The giveaway, it was a great moment in American history when Justice Sonia Sotomayor made up the statistic of 100,000 children in hospitals for COVID. How could she say that? Because she's an ignoramus. Most people on the left are ignoramuses. She's a Supreme Court justice and doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. They make up things. Russia collusion was made up. Donald Trump is a dictator is made up. The man was president 4 years. How was he a dictator? He got a chance to be a dictator. How come he wasn't? It's one thing to say he will be a dictator in 2016. It's quite another to say he was a dictator after 2020. Really? How so? Because they will say anything about anyone whom they oppose. Anything. When I go to colleges, there are almost always demonstrators against my appearance there. What I try to do is actually talk to them. And I even had, this is an hour I should replay. I conducted the Santa Monica Symphony Orchestra three and a half years ago at the Disney Concert Hall. I conducted a Haydn symphony. It's a sort of avocation of mine to conduct. And I'm deeply lucky that I get to. So Santa Monica is a left-wing city. It's not a liberal city. And here I am, big conservative, who also knows music, going to conduct. By the way, I raised enough money. I didn't take a nickel. And I raised enough money that night to fill their entire annual budget. Yet the former mayor of Santa Monica said no one should attend the concert. It was better for him to crush his orchestra than have people listen to Dennis Prager conduct. It's a scorched earth policy. They'll destroy anything that they want. So I am going to tell you what a professor said about me, and then I challenged him on this. It's important stuff. In the meantime, let me remind you about Nerve Renew, a phenomenal product that I asked to advertise on my show. If you have tingling, numbness in your hands or feet, as I have had in my feet much of my life, I had special inserts in my shoes for my shoes made. They worked while I wore my shoes. Terrible at night when I didn't go to bed with shoes on. Anyway, I took Nerve Renew, and about 9 months later, I threw away the inserts. Try it for 2 months for free, and try it for a year with a money-back guarantee. TryNerveRenew.com.
Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
The hard infrastructure bill that you helped pass, it meant a lot in terms of what it's going to get done, but it also meant a lot in the politics of getting Build Back Better killed. Can you explain that to people?
Yeah, I mean, initially the Democrats knew, the poll data was clear, what was popular was hard infrastructure, deteriorating roads and bridges and expand broadband. That was the popular part. And so I liked the approach in the Senate of putting together a bipartisan group. The president ended up agreeing with that to deal with the popular part of it, which I described as the sugar, leaving the Democrats to see if they could pass the spinach. And as we ended the year, it looks to me like they couldn't swallow the spinach. Now, I know Schumer said last night on a call he's not giving up. I don't expect him to. But the worst of BBB, it appears to me, is dead.
It does to me as well, and congratulations on that. It was great strategery, as former President Bush liked to say. I want to turn to senators. They have different career paths. Some are looking down the street at 1600, and some are looking at Mitch McConnell and want to be leader someday. John Thune's actually been in both positions. I read a story that got me upset that John Thune might be thinking of retiring. How do you say it ain't so, Joe, in South Dakota, Leader McConnell?
Well, John Thune is an outstanding senator. He's done a great job as whip, which is our number 2 position in the Senate. It would be a real setback for the country and for our party if he retires, and I certainly hope he won't.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
So when I conducted the Santa Monica Symphony Orchestra, 7 members of the orchestra refused to play for this bigot, Dennis Prager. And one of them was a professor at UCLA. Shock, isn't it? Shock. So I actually, as I've told you, I will debate any prominent leftist, but they refuse to debate me or Larry Elder or anybody else on the left. The left doesn't debate. I don't blame them. They lose every debate because they don't have a clue what we say. They don't hear us, read us, see us, study under us, or anything. We know everything they say. They know nothing we say. I have a debate. There's a debate of a San Francisco synagogue. A few years ago, I debated a left-wing Jew. I'm a Jew, so it was an intra-Jewish debate, so you could watch it. It's on Dennis Prager, San Francisco synagogue. I don't remember the man's name. It's not important. They don't debate. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. offered Jake Tapper to debate because Tapper dismissed him, I don't know, with the usual crackpot, so on. So if the guy's a crackpot, why don't you show him up on a public debate? And so look at what a crackpot he is. They don't debate. So anyway, this one of the professors who said that I was a bigot, and he wouldn't play the violin for a bigot, I invited him on my show for an hour, a whole hour. And I began with, I know me better than you know me, but maybe you know me better than I know me. Why do you say I'm a bigot? And then if you listen to that hour, you will understand how empty, how shallow leftist rhetoric is. He's a professor at UCLA. I was so gentle. You know who wasn't gentle? Adam Carolla. Adam Carolla heard it because I'm honored. Adam Carolla listens to my show every day. And Adam heard this hour and eviscerated this professor on his show. Sometimes I choke up. So that's just a lesson to be learned here. I want to read to you from a professor. I have two major things to read to you. You know what? I'll do the professor afterwards. The Israeli professor. I'll just give you a hint now. This is sort of a trailer. Professor Ehud Kimron is the head of the Department of Microbiology and Immunology. Okay? Does that qualify? Dennis Prager is not a scientist, but this man is. At Tel Aviv University, one of the leading Israeli immunologists. And he wrote an open letter to the Israeli, in fact, the global management of the coronavirus epidemic. And this is how it begins. Ministry of Health, it's time to admit failure. I guess I'll continue. It's too important. In the end, the truth will always be revealed, and the truth about the coronavirus policy is beginning to be revealed. When the destructive concepts collapse one by one, there is nothing left but to tell the experts who led the management of the pandemic, we told you so. 2 years late, you finally realize that a respiratory virus cannot be defeated, and that any such attempt is doomed to fail. See, I didn't realize that, but that's why we don't have a cure for the cold. There's no vaccine for the cold. There's no cure for the cold. The whole thing was doomed to failure, says the head of microbiology and immunology at one of the leading universities on earth, Tel Aviv University. You do not admit it because you have admitted almost no mistake in the last 2 years. But in retrospect, it is clear that you have failed miserably in almost all of your actions, and even the media is already having a hard time covering your shame. Boy, talk about a guy who's going to make enemies. This is guts. Remember I did an hour, only outliers do good. Some outliers do bad, but only outliers do good. Most humans, sweet as they may be, are sheep. And that certainly includes people in science. They get a degree in herd-like thinking and cowardice when they graduate medical school, and graduate law school, and graduate any graduate school. But I now realize that immoral apathy, herd-like thinking, is a characteristic of the medical profession and the scientists of our Western world as much as any other group. This man is a giant. I'd love to have him on. Maybe I could interview him in Hebrew and we could have simultaneous translation. That's how much I want him on. You have admitted almost no mistake, but in retrospect, it is clear. Okay, I read that. You refuse to admit that the infection comes in waves that fade by themselves. Despite years of observations and scientific knowledge, you insisted on attributing every decline of a wave solely to your actions. And so through false propaganda, quote, you overcame the plague, unquote. And again you defeated it, and again and again and again. You refuse to admit that mass testing is ineffective, despite your own contingency plans explicitly stating so. You refuse to admit that recovery is more protective than a vaccine. That's right. It doesn't matter to the liars at the CDC if you've had COVID or not. You are better protected, or at least as good protected, I believe now, better protected. That's what this major scientist writes. You refuse to admit that recovery is more protective than a vaccine, despite previous knowledge and observations showing that non-recovered vaccinated people are more likely to be infected than recovered people. I got to put this up. Follow the science is another lie of the left. They don't follow the science. They don't give a damn about science.
Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking gone.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Judge Thomas, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
By the way, I see some calls like Dan in Hopkins says, frustrating to hear you, Dennis, say there is no evidence of voter fraud. I never said no evidence. I said no proof. It's a very big difference. I think there's a lot of evidence. I don't think there's proof. That has to be established, generally speaking, in a court of law. And as I said, no judge has heard it because they have no guts. Courage is the rarest of the human traits. Have you ever heard me say that? And it has never been clearer. You know, when I tell you the failure, the utter abject failure of the medical profession in the last 2 years, the sheep-like behavior of most doctors, the lie they believe that ivermectin is a horse dewormer and that's its primary purpose, and that it even has danger, and they went along with the FDA on this, one of the safest drugs in the world, and deprived people of any therapeutic. Go home, get rest. And if you get worse, go to the hospital and maybe you'll need a respirator. Or we'll give you remdesivir, which is one nurse told me has a nickname in hospitals. Death is near. That's what doctors have done. There are exceptions. If your doctor is an exception, you're a fortunate human being. Anyway, I did not say there's no evidence. So my position will not satisfy a lot of people, and I respect that fact. It didn't satisfy my caller from the left and my colleagues and supporters on the right who want me to say, I know for a fact that Joe Biden cheated his way into the election. I won't say it. I don't know it for a fact. I am agnostic to this day, however, because of the overwhelming anomalies of this election. As I said, there may not be proof that the guy murdered somebody, but the circumstantial evidence is enormous. That's it. Evidence is not the same as proof. I would love to see it done in a court, adjudicated. Back to this, the head of microbiology and immunology at Tel Aviv University, an utter condemnatory letter of the Israeli authorities. As I said to you from the beginning, my two favorite countries have been an utter disappointment to me, Israel and the United States. Israel even more than the United States. Even conservatives in Israel went along. It was under Netanyahu, a conservative, that these lockdowns, like in America, took place, that kids didn't go to school. Israel's been an abject failure on this issue, as has every country but Sweden. But there is one difference. We have massive pro-liberty, pro-science. In this case, science and liberty coincide. I had COVID. Why am I not allowed into a place just like the vaccinated is? That is not science.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open door.
The editorship on the Salem radio network.
Hello?
That journey is extremely...
Yeah, I heard you were having trouble, so I dialed you.
Died in the desert
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported.
Okay, perfect. I'll be here.
The urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Right. So this has changed in the culture. We now have entire stadiums screaming blank Joe Biden.
Right.
I actually think that in some measure this is a sign of health in the country.
I don't think you're wrong. In fact, my last column, I talk about in essence, what the American people are feeling in terms of how they're being treated by the current administration.
Now, excuse me, by the way, I'm not saying I approve of it.
Right.
It makes me uncomfortable.
Clearly.
But at the same time,
we're talking about what we're observing.
It seems like a strange sign of health that we feel free enough to say that.
Well, and I don't even know that we necessarily feel free. What I would say is that the American people feel like kind of a battered spouse at this point.
Okay, you wrote an article.
And that the administration is so abusive to how they're treating people that this reaction that you're seeing, and it started out in 2 college football stadiums. It's now been in dozens to hundreds.
It's the new wave.
NFL teams had it going on this week. Talladega or NASCAR or whatever they ran had people chanting it. There is something so inherently abusive about how people are being treated
by the
that
government.
They are, and particularly in a society that wouldn't consider itself particularly Christocentric. And it is, I am actually thankful, to your point, to see a degree of, we're not going to let this abuse continue, even if it's nothing more than using our freedom of speech to say something that's very vulgar and attach it to him. We're not taking it anymore.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
The hard infrastructure bill that you helped pass, it meant a lot in terms of what it's going to get done, but it also meant a lot in the politics of getting Build Back Better killed. Can you explain that to people?
Yeah, I mean, initially the Democrats knew, the poll data was clear, what was popular was hard infrastructure, deteriorating roads and bridges and expand broadband. That was the popular part. And so I liked the approach in the Senate of putting together a bipartisan group. The president ended up agreeing with that to deal with the popular part of it, which I described as the sugar, leaving the Democrats to see if they could pass the spinach. And as we ended the year, it looks to me like they couldn't swallow the spinach. Now, I know Schumer said last night on a call he's not giving up. I don't expect him to. But the worst of BBB, it appears to me, is dead.
It does to me as well, and congratulations on that. It was great strategery, as former President Bush liked to say. I want to turn to senators. They have different career paths. Some are looking down the street at 1600, and some are looking at Mitch McConnell and want to be leader someday. John Thune's actually been in both positions. I read a story that got me upset that John Thune might be thinking of retiring. How do you say it ain't so, Joe, in South Dakota, Leader McConnell?
Well, John Thune is an outstanding senator. He's done a great job as whip, which is our number 2 position in the Senate. It would be a real setback for the country and for our party if he retires, and I certainly hope he won't.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. China has built the largest DNA database in the world, and it's only growing. This should concern all of us. That's because China could use this information in the future, perhaps, for example, to build bioweapons targeting specific ethnic groups. Given this background, common sense dictates that Americans shouldn't be storing their DNA or other personal information with Chinese-linked firms. Quite sensibly, after getting an FBI briefing about the firm's connections to China, the Los Angeles County Sheriff notified the county that his office wouldn't work with Fulgent. That's the genetics firm LA County hired for mandatory COVID testing and registration. Fulgent even admits in a public disclaimer it stores information outside the United States, where data privacy protections may not be as secure. I'll bet. What's alarming is how many others have chosen to work with Fulgent. The question is why.
Publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu
All right, everybody, I want to dedicate... I forgot I interrupted Dr. Fussbend. Oof. Male-female hour, most honest talk about men and women, I believe, in the American media. And if there's more honest talk, somebody should inform me of it, and I would actually listen. I would be so curious. So every week, Wednesday, the second hour of my program is the male-female hour. And 4 times a year, I have Allison Armstrong. And now you can see Allison because my show is on Skype. But it's not, you don't need Skype. I'm just telling you how we're doing it. Oh, my God, look at you. You look great. Allison reminded me before the show we hadn't been with each other physically in 9 years. Physical presence. Yes. So is that your place that you're talking to me from?
Yeah, this is what I call my little house. Its name is Harmony, and I moved from almost 4,000 square feet to less than 700, and I'm so happy.
You're good. You're good, Allison. AllisonArmstrong.com, 1 L in Allison, by the way. She has helped really tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people work through difficulties in relationships and understand men better in particular, but also understand women better. So I give Allison free rein in choosing a topic. And by the way, is there a wind coming through in your place? Is there a? Do you guys hear a background sound?
I can fix that.
Okay, great. She's in Colorado, and
the only problem with fixing it is that's my heater I'm turning off, and it's 10 degrees out.
Oh my God, that is a problem. So turn it on every break. Turn it on high power. And put on a coat. Otherwise, we'll have to live with it. Okay, I was just curious what the sound was. Anyway, it's still there, so it is what it is. Okay, so
it's shutting down.
All right,
it takes a moment.
That's fine. It's 10 degrees there. Oh my God, 10 degrees.
Yeah.
So if there's a wind, you're talking about a wind chill factor of under 0. Yes. Well, thank God for global warming. That's all I could say. Okay, so here I know you have a topic which is very important. I just want to begin with something because I just recently spoke to a friend of mine who got divorced. I didn't see it coming, but I didn't really know. I really knew him, not his wife, and not his marriage. So they got a divorce. They were married 25 years. They have wonderful children, and what really happened is he changed. He didn't change as a person, but his life changed. Then he became a public figure, and his wife didn't marry a public figure. So I have so I've always said this. I am both religious and conservative, but I always sympathize with the secular leftist whose spouse becomes conservative or religious. I always sympathize with the spouse whose spouse changed. The person they married is now different. In my view, maybe even better, but it's irrelevant. I have sympathy for the one who got changed on. Am I making sense to you?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so do you have any thoughts on how a marriage can survive the other person having such a change, from a private person to a public figure, from religious to irreligious, from irreligious to religious, from conservative to left to conservative? How could a marriage survive that?
Well, you know this what people say when they get divorced, we grew apart.
Right.
Right? I don't believe that. I don't think we grow apart, actually. I think we make choices that take us apart, that take us in a different direction. We choose, like if you think of 2 train tracks, we choose to send one back in a different direction. And it can happen a little bit at a time, but it adds up profoundly. And that's the thing we have to watch out for. Do I keep choosing this union? Do I keep choosing going in the same direction? Do I keep choosing us? And for example, being married to Greg, there was a point when I saw I had to transform my relationship to money. That I had such a poverty consciousness, it was preventing the difference I could make in the world. And so I took it on. My life and my mission depended upon it. And he in.
And we're having some Skype problems here in the communication. I feel terrible, Allison. Can we re-Skype you? Because I want everybody to hear every word, and obviously I want to. So guys, re-Skype Allison. So I'll just tell you folks, my view when I talk to Allison, I just really want to hear Allison. But since we have this unfortunate need to take this quick hiatus, I don't see how a marriage is usually, sometimes it is salvageable, where two people, where one even is different than the person that the other married. It's like nobody's at fault, but it is the breach of a contract. I married X and I got not X. It's not X's fault. It's not Y's fault. Life is filled with no fault tragedy. It's also filled with fault tragedy. All right, let's see how we're going to do now. I see her, but she's in a remote. I don't think it should matter, but she's in a remote area of Colorado. All right, so why don't you restate? You were talking, I think, about your previous marriage. Is that correct?
Yeah, and there was a time, when I knew I had to transform my relationship with money, and I was working on it, and I spoke to Greg about it, and he literally dug in, like, no, I like it. I like how we are. And I said, I have to go here, and I want you to go with me. And I literally just sat there in silence for about a half an hour while he raged about it, then cried about it, and then was really quiet, and then he finally said, okay, I'm going with you. But I had to be, like, what would happen to us if we ended up such different points of view about money, right? And that this happens with all the parts of our lives. And if someone, for example, take an opportunity that causes them to be a public person, or is a public person and wants to be a private person, I mean, you know this, I know this, just that change can have a huge effect.
Right.
Unless you're vigilant about not letting it.
But
right?
But how do you not let it? I mean, if in this case she married a guy, obviously loved him, and he became a public figure. She didn't. Well, so let me finish what I was going to say, and then I want to incorporate what you say. And she just didn't want to share him with the world. So you would say to her, look, this is still the same man you married, but he's now public, and that means to a certain extent you're sharing him with the world. But if he's attentive to you, what difference does it make? Right. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, I would have had a conversation about what do you need that you're not getting that you think the cause of it is him being public.
That's
Maybe
right.
That's not the cause.
That's very good, because I'm not sure they had that discussion. All right, we'll be back with Allison Armstrong, and if we have to do it by phone, we'll do it by phone. Back in a moment.
Streaming on Salem Now.
understand that a plane has crashed into...
The people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Biggest and most costly manhunt in U.S. history.
United States killed Osama bin Laden.
There are reports surfacing that Al-Qaeda has placed a $50,000 US bounty on the heads of any U.S. Navy SEALs.
Nobody's going to survive that. There's nobody in that.
This is the single largest loss of life in Afghanistan in a single incident.
Most of them are U.S. Navy SEALs.
We discovered bullets in the bodies of the Navy SEALs. The military threw them away.
More likely than not, that supports a shootout on board.
Anybody out there, we have a fallen angel.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you? He turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dream cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Man, I miss my father, and I want him to be here with me, but he's not.
We all had something in common. A lot of us were miserable. We had no fathers in our lives.
This is how I began the life of crime. I desired to have a father who would tell me that what I did was wrong.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager, and we're back with Allison Armstrong, this time by phone. And at least we got a good glimpse of this woman, which was a wonderful glimpse, I might add. Anyway, we are seeing you, just we're hearing you on the phone. That's great. So you could also, it's Salem News Channel, right?
Yeah, I thought I would try this. I've
phoned in, and I was watching you speak, and there wasn't that much of a delay. It wasn't really distracting, so...
Oh, that's wonderful.
Pass down from one source and picture from another.
All right, so you really... I'm telling you, I wish they had you as their therapist, this couple that I know. I think you hit the nail on the head. I'm not saying it could always work, obviously. Especially, see, he didn't change ideologically. That's the tougher one, I think. If you marry, if you're both secular and one becomes religious, or you're both religious and one becomes secular, that's tougher. Or it's an even tougher than that is you're both on the left and one becomes the right, or you're both on the right and one becomes the left. But okay, anyway, when speaking to him, that what you said, okay, so you're not happy with his being a public figure, and that's understandable. It's a big change. What are you not getting as a result? Am I summarizing you properly?
Yeah, what are you not getting that you think is the result of him being public?
That's right.
It may not have anything to do with being public. It may have to do with time management, right? And dedicated time together. Like you and Sue pay a lot of attention to that, right? Or it may have to do with admiration. Admiration is heady. Admiration, the pull to spend our time wherever we're admired is so strong. And it's one of the reasons, for example, that men may work a lot. They get accused of being workaholics. No, it's just an arena in which they succeed and they're respected and they're admired, and they go home and that isn't happening at home. So that's something that can happen in becoming public, that the admiration, if you're not also admired at home, right? It's one of the things that I love about Sue checking in with you and listening to the show and being such a cheerleader for you, right? That, she thinks you're awesome. And we need that. We all need that. And if someone starts getting a lot of that from someplace else and isn't getting it in their relationship, whatever causes it to happen, it's not going to go well.
Well said. Well said. I just want to add that while Sue is a cheerleader, it doesn't come without criticism and flaw finding. Just want to add, lest people get the wrong idea that I come home and she has pom-poms.
She's also a coach.
Do you know I once said on the radio that wife is Sanskrit for flaw finder. And I thought it was a hilarious nonsense line that I will throw out that comes into my brain from nowhere. And I met people who said, boy, that was so interesting that wife is Sanskrit for flaw finder. And I'm thinking, you believe me? I'm very touched that they believed me, but anyway, be that as it may. Okay, so that's a very big deal, the change thing and the way you approached it. Okay, so you want to talk about the new year and new and old and past and present. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks. So one of the things that I encounter with men and women is the desire to put the past in the past. Like, do we have to talk about this again? Can we just put the past in the past? And I understand that because we have a history, both men and women have a history of talking about the past making no difference, right? That it can make things worse. It makes no difference. It costs a lot of energy. It can be really emotional. Like, seriously, can we just let it be in the past? And yet, there are things that carry forward. And there are ways of speaking about it that actually can have it exist in the past, keep it from showing up in the future, and even make us stronger for the future. And, one way to talk about what I've been doing for 30 years is paying attention to what's worth having a conversation about and how can you do it, right? How can you avoid the landmines? And, since this is the male-female hour, I've been making sure to think ahead of time, Dennis, okay, what's the difference and what's the same? And as I would say that generally for women, what carries forward is hurt feelings. And if they don't get addressed, even when we think we've gotten over them, how you can tell they've carried forward is by a loss of intimacy and a loss of generosity, a reduction in the amount that she's compelled to give. And we joke about this now in my relationship with Dan, right, which is over a year, and now I, live 90 steps away, so I literally can invite him over for dinner in 5 minutes, that he knows all is well if I'm compelled to feed him. And, yeah, all is well. That I overflow with food, right? He stopped by last night to say hi when I had a 17-minute break, and I'm like, do you want some brownies to take home? It's like, okay, all's good. Allison, we're good. If I'm not offering him food, then he goes looking further. Did I get my feelings hurt? And I'll get my feelings hurt, like many women, if he is not present with me, right? Like he's trying to give me time, but he's actually not there. Like asks the question and doesn't wait for the answer, right? I'll get my feelings hurt. And that's a common girl thing, right? Distance, disconnect, we get feelings hurt, and then it just eats away at intimacy and generosity and affection. And then generally with men, it has to do with respect, feeling disrespected. So not appreciated for what you did, not appreciated for who you are as a human being, like your values, if ever your values are disrespected. Interrupted. Interrupted is something, we've talked about before that's really hard to not do, but it's a form of disrespect. And
all right, hold it there. This is gems here. Because right on the man. I'm not a woman. I take your word for it. Back in a moment.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. China has built the largest DNA database in the world, and it's only growing. This should concern all of us. That's because China could use this information in the future, perhaps, for example, to build bioweapons targeting specific ethnic groups. Given this background, common sense dictates that Americans shouldn't be storing their DNA or other personal information with Chinese-linked firms. Quite sensibly, after getting an FBI briefing about the firm's connections to China, the Los Angeles County Sheriff notified the county that his office wouldn't work with Fulgent. That's the genetics firm LA County hired for mandatory COVID testing and registration. Fulgent even admits in a public disclaimer it stores information outside the United States, where data privacy protections may not be as secure. I'll bet. What's alarming is how many others have chosen to work with Fulgent. The question is why.
Publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
America, if anybody wants it. But the answer is, yeah, I wish I had thought about ordering 500 million pills 2 months ago before COVID hit here.
But we're nearly 2 years into this pandemic. You're a year into the presidency. Empty shelves and no test kits in some places, 3 days before Christmas when it's so important. Is that good enough?
No, nothing's been good enough. But look where we are. When last Christmas we were in a situation where we had significantly fewer people vaccinated. Emergency rooms were filled.
Well, Mr. President, yes, I would have to agree with you on that. For once, there's something you and I agree on. Nothing has been good enough.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
You have Attorney Binger pick up an AR-15.
Oh my God, yeah.
And just decide you have better trigger posture than him, Kyle.
Kyle, what is he pointing at in the?
Is he threatening the jury?
Pretty much. He was pointing his gun at the gallery, and I looked at my attorney.
This is your gun, right?
That's my rifle.
Yeah, that is yours, right?
That we're having destroyed right now. We don't want anything to do with that.
Oh wow.
So I looked at Corey, and I said, Corey, that's gun safety 101. Loaded or unloaded. Treat a gun like it's loaded.
Yeah. And he points it at the jury.
Exactly.
I think at that point I said, all right, they're freaking out. I mean, they got nothing left.
So there's this video that the FBI had in their archives, 14 months. It clearly shows you being chased down by this deranged individual, corners you, all of it, HD. You know, this isn't, behind the cars, because, and this was always key that people who are looking at this never got, is that all the camera footage from that night was surface level, right? Because it's handheld. So, and of course, Richie thinks he has his camera going, but he doesn't. And he's beating himself up over that, but it happens in the heat of the moment, that this thing is above, looking down, sees the whole thing. You can actually see the anger and just insanity in Rosenbaum's face as he's chasing you, that I don't think you show that face to anybody, that they would think that this guy,
and let alone threatening to kill them twice that night.
Right, that he has anything other than, very dangerous, evil intentions.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager. You can watch us, by the way, at the Salem News Channel. And I will say that Allison is more worth watching than I am. A totally sexist comment, which is also accurate. Anyway, Allison Armstrong is my guest, and she is the owner of AllisonArmstrong.com, 1L in Allison. The amount she's helped women in particular, but both sexes, is remarkable. So we're talking about what hurts each sex, or something that obviously you raised. So I want you to react then to my 2-sentence statement that I have developed. It took me a long time to work this through. It sounds very simple when you hear it. And it is simple, but it took a lot of thinking. Tell me, and if you don't agree, I don't have a problem with that. So men want to be admired. A man wants to be admired by the woman he loves, and a woman wants to admire the man she loves. Does that sound right? Whoops, I didn't put you on. I am so sorry. I thought you were on Skype. Yeah, okay, go ahead. Is that right?
It's okay. I've just been giggling over here that it's better to watch me than you.
Oh.
And I know that the video's kind of pausing and stalling and stuff. So
no. It's my fault. I was so used to seeing you, I didn't think I had to do the sound part. But that's what happened. But I have to put you on like I used to. Okay, so I'm glad you found that funny. I mean, the part about watching you versus watching me.
Yes.
Good. But what about my statement? Yeah.
Your statement is, yes, it's simple, and like many simple things, it's really important, because to be loved by someone we admire, stunning, right? Like that brings it all together. The admiration shows up with the perception of strength, and the perception of strength is what makes us feel safe, and it's also attraction, right? It causes physical intimacy, that perception of strength. And this is why it matters so much that we understand that the way that men and women disrespect each other or hurt each other's feelings, or for both genders, anything that feels like being dismissed, right? Anything that feels like being dismissed is going to be an ouch. And what happens is, like, we often hurt each other, disrespect each other, are dismissive of each other, and we don't even know it because we're wired so differently. And then what'll happen is the other person's reaction, like the way a man reacts to being disrespected, has a woman admire him less. She thinks his reaction is ridiculous, right? And so she'll then admire him less because she doesn't understand his reaction is perfectly appropriate for his instincts, how he survives, succeeds, makes life work. That his reactions, they're not over the top. They're actually predictable. And so until we understand what we're doing to cause men to react in ways that has us admire you less, we're doomed. And vice versa, until men understand what you're doing and you don't even realize it, that has us think less of you, right? That has us be afraid of you, right? Like, you know this, Dennis. A man raising his voice, is this a man raising his voice? It means nothing. Right? It's like, he raised his voice. To a woman, a man raising his voice is really scary. The way we're wired, being physically weaker, what comes after you raise your voice? You raise your hand, right? And so it's such a shock to our nervous system when a man raises his voice, and then we'll have our own fight, flight, or freeze response, which then makes everything worse. And so that's why, I mean, it'll be 31 years next month since I started studying men, and I'm still fascinated. I still haven't committed to it. I'm just fascinated by if we can perceive accurately instead of through these filters of what would it mean if I did it, right? If we can actually see what it's like for the other person, and you know me, I'm big on curiosity. Like, verify. Did you raise your voice because, right? Did you do this
I want to talk to you
personal.
about that. That's. I want to talk to you about a woman raising her voice as well. Very important stuff with Alison Armstrong. AlisonArmstrong.com, 1L. ReliefFactor.com, no L's. Oh yeah, there is an L in Relief Factor, also 1L. How do you like that? ReliefFactor.com. Read about what this magic potion, so to speak, these little pills do for people. They're, I mean, can I say completely safe? I'm not a doctor, but I can't imagine any adverse reaction. And they're miracles. If you have any muscle or joint pain, they tell you if it'll work in 3 weeks, and if it doesn't, cancel your order and just pay $19.95. It's a very interesting thing that a product would say, we will give you a time in which it will work. ReliefFactor.com, 800-500-8384.
Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
The hard infrastructure bill that you helped pass, it meant a lot in terms of what it's going to get done, but it also meant a lot in the politics of getting Build Back Better killed. Can you explain that to people?
Yeah, I mean, initially the Democrats knew, the poll data was clear, what was popular was hard infrastructure, deteriorating roads, and bridges, and expand broadband. That was the popular part. And so I liked the approach in the Senate of putting together a bipartisan group. The president ended up agreeing with that to deal with the popular part of it, which I described as the sugar, leaving the Democrats to see if they could pass the spinach. And as we ended the year, it looks to me like they couldn't swallow the spinach. Now, I know Schumer said last night on a call he's not giving up. I don't expect him to. But the worst of BBB, it appears to me, is dead.
It does to me as well, and congratulations on that. It was great strategery, as former President Bush liked to say. I want to turn to senators. They have different career paths. Some are looking down the street at 1600, and some are looking at Mitch McConnell and want to be leaders someday. John Thune's actually been in both positions. I read a story that got me upset that John Thune might be thinking of retiring. How do you say it ain't so, Joe, in South Dakota, Leader McConnell?
Well, John Thune is an outstanding senator. He's done a great job as whip, which is our number 2 position in the Senate. It would be a real setback for the country and for our party if he retires, and I certainly hope he won't.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. China has built the largest DNA database in the world, and it's only growing. This should concern all of us. That's because China could use this information in the future, perhaps, for example, to build bioweapons targeting specific ethnic groups. Given this background, common sense dictates that Americans shouldn't be storing their DNA or other personal information with Chinese-linked firms. Quite sensibly, after getting an FBI briefing about the firm's connections to China, the Los Angeles County Sheriff notified the county that his office wouldn't work with Fulgent. That's the genetics firm LA County hired for mandatory COVID testing and registration. Fulgent even admits in a public disclaimer it stores information outside the United States, where data privacy protections may not be as secure. I'll bet. What's alarming is how many others have chosen to work with Fulgent. The question is why.
Publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager with the inimitable. What else can what other adjectives? Inimitable, brilliant, insightful, Alison Armstrong. And we got to how people read each other. This is a big part of your brilliance, is how men read women and women read men. And it's really, really important. And there's no way to know. You can't intuit it. You have to learn it. Women have to learn men. Men have to learn women. In fact, men have to learn themselves, and women have to learn themselves. It doesn't come automatically, this knowledge. That's why you say you've studied men for 30, 40, whatever it is, 30 years. I can't believe 40 years. You don't look like you've been studying.
It's 30.
40
30.
Yeah.
Oh, he's 31.
That's what I thought. I knew I had misspoken. So you mentioned about the effect on a woman if a man raises his voice.
Yes.
So I raised the question of what is the effect of the opposite, a woman raising her voice.
Oh, golly. So there's a study that showed that men process women's voices in the same part of their brain as music. So if a woman merely raises her voice, she just talks louder, that's one thing. But, and I won't do it. I mean, Dan, my boyfriend, my partner, like when he's watching my videos, when I imitate a woman screeching, he has to cover his ears. But we can screech, and it's like nails on a chalkboard, and it's usually out of fear and frustration and our inability to get through. But that doesn't have us get through better. That has it be worse. It's much worse.
Right. So what is she processes automatically that the raised voice can lead to a raised arm. What does he process? He's not worried generally about her being violent. So what does he process in hearing her yell at him?
Well, I think you could say better than I could.
Because I'm a man?
I think she can't hear him.
Wait, something just happened again on the sound. Okay, we're better.
Weird. Okay, better.
No, we're not better.
I think you could say...
Yeah, okay, go ahead. So on.
I think you could say better than I could. But I think that the sound of her voice is like...
all right, so I will say, you know what?
Radio.
I will tell you. Tell me if you agree with this. Because I've never thought this through, but I'm trying to imagine. She feels threatened. That's you're telling me as a woman. And I'll say as a man, he feels belittled.
Yep. Yeah, I would totally get that. So he's diminished, criticized, not good enough, and the screeching sound itself is going to prevent any facts that might be present in that communication from connecting. The actual message won't be heard.
So it's a biggie. I don't know how we got here, but it doesn't matter. It's big. It's a big one. Raising your voice is a big deal. That's the lesson here for either sex.
Yeah. And there's also, we're so much more perceptive than we give ourselves credit for. Like there's studies that show we can tell when another person's heartbeat has increased or decreased, its rate, when they're breathing shallow. Before we started today, I called Dan because there was something that happened last night that hurt my feelings, and I wanted to make sure that I was practicing what I preached and resolved it, like not bringing it into the future, right, before we started. And when I said I need to talk to you about something else last night, I think it's a little thing. He said, I thought so. I could feel it, right? So he could already tell that I was tense to bring it up. And it was just this little thing where he said, it was like my turn. Like, so what do you want me to know how your day is going? And I started to tell him, and then he went, oh, I found some pants. Just like he had what he would call a squirrel moment, right? So I thought his turn was done, and now it was going to be my turn, and I was thinking about what I was going to say, and then I felt dismissed. He didn't mean to dismiss me, right? He had no intention to do that. He was embarrassed that he did that. But, I'm a human girl. And so part of it is, I'm sorry I did that, right? Which he just said that. I'm really sorry I did that. And no, I didn't mean any of that by it. And then the other part of not bringing the past into the future
Wait. So that worked. Wait. That worked for you?
Totally.
Yeah. Well, so do you think you are the norm or not? That a woman raises, I felt dismissed or hurt. He says a true, oh my God, I really didn't mean that and I'm sorry. And that ends the issue. For how many women would it end the issue?
I think for every woman who isn't engaged in punishment. So I have to give that caveat. There are women who are collecting things to punish a man for, and then no apology will work because she's not willing to be restored. For any woman wanting to be restored, then yes, it works amazingly well. And then there's the other side of it, like the conversations worth having are, okay, so what do we do next time? So not if it happens. We're human. It's going to happen. He's going to have a squirrel moment, right? I'm going to get my feelings hurt that he didn't listen, hear me out. So what do we do then? And being in partnership about this is how we're going to deal with that human moment the next time.
Okay, great. Final segment coming up with Allison Armstrong. I'm Dennis Prager.
Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking brought.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Man, I miss my father. And I want him to be here with me, but he's not.
We all had something in common. A lot of us were miserable. We had no fathers in our lives.
This is how I began the life of crime. I desired to have a father who would tell me that what I did was wrong.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This has been a particularly rich hour. They all are, but this, I think, was particularly rich with Alison Armstrong. You know, when I deal with this every week now, I don't know, 15 years, and when I speak to you 4 times a year for, I don't know, 10 years, or however long it's been, I have a certain degree of sympathy for men and women, and you realize it's really it's sort of an art form to learn the other sex and to make one another happy, although I believe it's our task to make ourselves happy nevertheless. A spouse can contribute. So by the way, I want to bounce another thought off you in the 2 minutes remaining. So you know the famous phrase, happy wife, happy life, Alison?
Yes, I do.
Right. Okay. So I have worked my whole, well, not my whole life, but for many years I worked on a response. But the problem that I encountered was there was no word rhymes with husband. So we're sort of dead in the water. So I finally came up with a rejoinder to happy wife, happy life, which is accurate. And tell me what.
Ready.
You ready? Tell me what you think.
Yep.
Rational spouse, happy house. I hope that She's either laughing with me or at me.
Well, I think it's awesome, and I'm laughing because I'm logical to a fault. And so in my household, right, and it's been 2.5 years now since Greg passed, I was the way more rational, logical person. And it drove me nuts.
Oh, so you agree with me. So there you go.
I do. Yes. Rational spouse, happy house.
I should trademark that and make a one of those wooden signs that people could put up in the house. Oh my God!
Well, and I also think part of being rational, truly being rational, is including the possibility that I'm wrong.
Oh God, is that true? You know what? Let's do that on a forthcoming show. The possibility that I'm wrong. I could hug you right now. I send you a hug from L.A. to frozen Colorado. And I look forward to one day meeting Dan.
Oh, you'll love him. He's a kick in the pants.
Kick in the pants. That's a good one. Bless you, Allison.
Oh my gosh, it's changed my life so much. Bless you. I love you. So good to see you.
Mutual.
Thank
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
The whole thing is up in flames. I don't even want to waste a lot of time on the degenerate who burned it down. It was a guy from Brooklyn, I think 49 years old. They miraculously got him. And I just cannot shake what a metaphor that is. You know, millions and millions of people watch Fox News. Fox News celebrates American exceptionalism, greatness, the very, very patriotic channel. There's no way around that. They love the country. They proudly air plenty of conservative views, along with liberal views as well. They try to take their fair and balanced mantra pretty seriously. And some evil guy decided to burn down the Fox News channel red, white, and blue Christmas tree last night. And it's gone. And I just keep thinking about how much evil there is right now in the country, what we're up against as Americans. Right is wrong, good is evil, up is down, everything is inside out. And I was so anguished this morning in hearing about this and so upset. And I know a lot of it is because of my personal relationship over the years with Fox. I spent many, many hours walking to and from Fox as a Fox News contributor. I guest hosted Sean Hannity's show a number of times. I guest hosted Fox and Friends back in the day. I was on Fox many, many nights.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
The hard infrastructure bill that you helped pass, it meant a lot in terms of what it's going to get done, but it also meant a lot in the politics of getting Build Back Better killed. Can you explain that to people?
Yeah, I mean, initially the Democrats knew, the poll data was clear, what was popular was hard infrastructure, deteriorating roads and bridges and expand broadband. That was the popular part. And so I liked the approach in the Senate of putting together a bipartisan group. The president ended up agreeing with that to deal with the popular part of it, which I described as the sugar, leaving the Democrats to see if they could pass the spinach. And as we ended the year, it looks to me like they couldn't swallow the spinach. Now, I know Schumer said last night on a call he's not giving up. I don't expect him to. But the worst of BBB, it appears to me, is dead.
It does to me as well, and congratulations on that. It was great strategery, as former President Bush liked to say. I want to turn to senators. They have different career paths. Some are looking down the street at 1600, and some are looking at Mitch McConnell and want to be leaders someday. John Thune's actually been in both positions. I read a story that got me upset that John Thune might be thinking of retiring. How do you say it ain't so, Joe, in South Dakota, Leader McConnell?
Well, John Thune is an outstanding senator. He's done a great job as whip, which is our number 2 position in the Senate. It would be a real setback for the country and for our party if he retires, and I certainly hope he won't.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. China has built the largest DNA database in the world, and it's only growing. This should concern all of us. That's because China could use this information in the future, perhaps, for example, to build bioweapons targeting specific ethnic groups. Given this background, common sense dictates that Americans shouldn't be storing their DNA or other personal information with Chinese-linked firms. Quite sensibly, after getting an FBI briefing about the firm's connections to China, the Los Angeles County Sheriff notified the county that his office wouldn't work with Fulgent. That's the genetics firm LA County hired for mandatory COVID testing and registration. Fulgent even admits in a public disclaimer it stores information outside the United States, where data privacy protections may not be as secure. I'll bet. What's alarming is how many others have chosen to work with Fulgent. The question is why.
Publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
America, if anybody wants it. But the answer is, yeah, I wish I had thought about ordering 500 million pills 2 months ago before COVID hit here.
But we're nearly 2 years into this pandemic. You're a year into the presidency. Empty shelves and no test kits in some places, 3 days before Christmas when it's so important. Is that good enough?
No, nothing's been good enough. But look where we are. When last Christmas we were in a situation where we had significantly fewer people vaccinated. Emergency rooms were filled.
Well, Mr. President, yes, I would have to agree with you on that. For once, there's something you and I agree on. Nothing has been good enough.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
My friends, I'm Dennis Prager. I want you to hear a piece from Politico. Politico is centrist liberal. So this is not from a conservative site. The article is by Rebecca Bodenheimer, an Oakland-based journalist, that is titled how school closures made me question my progressive politics. June 26, 2020 was the day I went public with just how angry I was about my son's school closing down for COVID. And my life has not been the same since. I had begun to sense a difference between my own feelings and those of my mom's text group, which included 9 of us whose kids had gone to preschool together since they were 2 years old. The kids were 8 at the time. These were the parents of my son's closest friends. We even had a name for our group, the Mamigas, I guess, as most of us were either Latinos or married to Latinos and shared a commitment to bilingual education. Okay, get it? This is a woman who is Latino, or married. In her case, she's Latino, married to a non-Latino, I presume from her last name. And that was true for the group. They're either Latinos or married to one. I tweeted, does anyone else feel enraged at the idea that you'll be homeschooling in the fall full time? Because my mom's group text is in full-blown acceptance mode, and it bugs the S out of me. She writes the word. Unquote. I didn't know it yet, but this would be my first foray into school reopening advocacy, which eventually included helping lead a group of Oakland parents in pushing the school district to be more transparent about the process of reopening, particularly in negotiations with the teachers union, and writing several pieces on the topic. I probably should have inferred that becoming a school reopening advocate would not go over well in my progressive Oakland community. But I didn't anticipate the social repercussions or the political identity crisis it would trigger for me. My own experience as a self-described progressive in ultra-lefty Oakland is just one example of how people across the political spectrum, get this, have become frustrated with Democrats' position on school reopenings. Parents who advocated for school reopening were repeatedly demonized on social media as racist and mischaracterized as Trump supporters. Members of the parent group I helped lead were consistently attacked on Twitter and Facebook by 2 Oakland moms with ties to the teachers union. They labeled advocates' calls for schools reopening white supremacy and called us Karens. There was no recognition of the fact that we were advocating for our kids who were floundering in remote learning, or that public schools across the country in red states, that's conservative Republican states, opened in fall 2020 without major outbreaks, as did private schools just miles from our home. Some progressive parents now admit they were too afraid of the blowback from their communities to speak up, and they were right to be wary. We paid a price. So did Democrats, even if they didn't realize it until later, or still don't. Glenn Youngkin's surprise gubernatorial win in Virginia in November was a wake-up call for the party. As has been recognized, Youngkin's focus on school-related, sorry, here lost my place because of something that happened here. Let's see. Yeah. Was a wake-up call for the party. As has been recognized, Youngkin's focus on school-related issues, especially after Terry McAuliffe made a dismissive remark about parents, was an effective tactic. Still, all over Twitter, I saw progressives denying that parent anger at prolonged school closures was a major issue in that election. They claimed it was all about anti-critical race theory sentiment, despite research showing school pandemic policies were more to blame. Even more disturbing, as evidenced in the comments of a recent tweet by Senator Brian Schatz, Democrat Hawaii, is that many still believe shutting down schools for a year or more was justified. Some unions and districts are now using last year's closures as a precedent. Recently, with the Omicron surge, several major school districts announced they were switching to remote learning for a week or more, including Newark and dozens of other New Jersey districts, Ann Arbor and Cleveland. Then last week, the Chicago Teachers Union voted for a sick-out, followed by teachers in San Francisco and Oakland engaging in similar actions. I had until then resisted my dad's suggestion that I consider sending my son to private school. I was a proud alumna of San Francisco public schools and planned for my kids to attend Oakland public schools despite their reputation for behavioral and academic problems. As an interracial, bilingual, bicultural family, what we wanted was for our son to attend a dual language immersion program with plenty of other kids of color. My family was also in no way able to pay for private school. But I began to fear that even in-person school in fall 2021 was at risk because of the impossible demands of the teachers' unions, that schools remained fully remote until there were, quote, near zero COVID cases in Oakland, and apathy of the school board and district. Even after teachers were prioritized for vaccination, there was no urgency to get kids back to the classroom. My dad offered to help pay for private school, and we applied. In March, we were notified that my son was admitted to a private dual language immersion school and that we had been granted a 75% scholarship. There was still no deal in place between Oakland School District and the union to return to in-person school. And she ends, I had lost all faith in the decision makers to do what was best for my kid. Get that? She lost all faith in decision makers. She lost all faith in teachers to do what is best for her kids. A left-wing Oakland Latina woman. Democrat her whole life, progressive. Lost all faith in teachers and schools. Her words in Politico. I lost all faith in them about 20 years ago. So they're catching up. That's right. People who love their children more than they love Marx, M-A-R-X, are losing faith in schools. This is a silver lining. Not just this. A lot of people are getting sick of the white supremacy charge on all whites because it's so much, it's just a libel. So I made the only logical decision. Even then I feared what fellow parents might think of me. I'm well aware of the stereotypes of white parents choosing the private school option when the going gets tough in public schools. And now she concludes, I underline this. I told myself that prioritizing being a good leftist at the expense of my son's well-being wasn't good parenting. But as a red diaper baby myself, the white guilt dies hard. The sentence of the month, maybe the year. I told myself that prioritizing being a good leftist at the expense of my son's well-being wasn't good parenting. Every leftist has sacrificed their child for the sake of leftism, including those of you who have given your young kids vaccinations. Okay. Yesterday, I told you the staggeringly small number of kids getting COVID. There are probably more kids hurt by the vaccine than helped.
Streaming on Salem Now.
We understand that a plane has crashed into...
The people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Biggest and most costly manhunt in U.S. history.
United States killed Osama bin Laden.
There are reports surfacing that Al-Qaeda has placed a $50,000 bounty on the heads of any U.S. Navy SEALs.
Nobody's going to survive that. There's nobody in that.
This is the single largest loss of life in Afghanistan in a single incident.
Most of them are U.S. Navy SEALs.
We discovered bullets in the bodies of the Navy SEALs. The military threw them away.
More likely than not, that supports a shootout on board.
Anybody out there, we have a fallen angel.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking gone.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Man, I miss my father. And I want him to be here with me, but he's not.
We all had something in common. A lot of us were miserable. We had no fathers in our lives.
This is how I began the life of crime. I desired to have a father who would tell me that what I did was wrong.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody. I want to remind you about Pure Talk, the alternative with massive savings to T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T. $800 a year savings for the average family. I thought it was too good to believe. $30 a month, unlimited text, unlimited talk, 6 gigabytes of data, $30 a month. So I actually got a phone through Pure Talk and a number and decided to compare. It's the same service, same everything. And you can get phones for extremely a great discount as well, like I did. All you need to do is dial pound 250 on your own phone now. You can keep your number. You can keep your phone. That's your choice. And you will have 50% off your whole family's rate for the first month using the name Dennis Prager. Pound 250 and then say Dennis Prager. $30 a month. Unlimited text, unlimited talk, 6 gigabytes of data. Pound 250, say Dennis Prager. I'm Dennis Prager. So what's your take on teachers and teachers' unions in schools? What's your take now that they have screwed your children badly by not having school, in-person school? The damage, I don't know if it's permanent. I have no idea. But it is real. And I never overstate. I try to understate. It's been a war on children by the left. It's preceded this. I've told people to take their kids out of most schools for at least the last decade or so because of the junk that is taught to them. The latest being you're not a boy or a girl. You'll decide which. Tell us your preferred pronoun. Gender isn't binary. America Stinks was founded in 1619. To be race conscious is to be anti-racist. To be blind to race is to be racist. So I have a whole host of reasons not to send my kid to a regular private school, by the way, as much as public school. Private schools are just as bad. Some private schools are good. Some public schools are good. But this is a left-wing woman in Oakland, California, writing that they're losing her because, you see, the day you realize that leftism is a bully, and the day there is anybody fights the bully back is the beginning of the end of the bullies. That's the reason they have to be so cruel and act so relentless, so that they will inspire fear in people not answering Mark Zuckerberg or the Twitter people who are set on destroying truth in this country and destroying everything that is noble. The George Soroses. It's a lot of bad folk out there. But the schools, teachers, is it possible to respect school teachers like we once did? Is it possible? No, it is not. Are there wonderful individual teachers? Of course. There are wonderful individuals in every group. But it doesn't mean you respect the group. How many people does this woman in Politico represent? That's the question. I think a lot. If the Democrats lose the moms, it's over. They're already losing the Latino vote, so they have to go crazy on the black vote. So this phony issue of voter suppression, it's a lie. It's as big a lie as the collusion with Russia. They live on lies. So this woman, this is a very interesting question. Will this woman vote Republican for the first time in her life? And she provided the answer at the end. If you care more about your children than you do about leftism, you will vote Republican. That's the question. Do I care more about my leftist ideology or my child? Many leftists do care more about leftism than their children. It is a cult. Leftism is a cult. That you would welcome the idea for 2 years that your child not go to school for no good reason, not a single good reason, except the paranoia and selfishness and narcissism of teachers? That's the only reason. There is no medical reason, no scientific reason. That's what she is coming to realize. This is in Politico. So that's the question. We're going to put this up at DennisPrager.com. You should send this article. You should be very judicious in what articles you put up on your Facebook page or send out or tweet, because you may not get away with putting up a conservative. But this woman is a dyed-in-the-wool red diaper baby. She was raised not red as in Republican, but red as in communist or near communist. But she loves her child more than she loves the left. That's all you have to do. Love your child more than you love the left. And you will leave the left. That's all it takes. The damage done to children in the name of health, the false God, that staggeringly false God. For most of my life, I've been saying the motto, Health über alles, right? Taken from Deutschland über alles. Germany above all, now it's health above all. Gesundheit über alles. That's right, Gesundheit über alles. Those of you with German background or listening in Germany, that's what you should know. That's what Germany has done. Went from Deutschland über alles to Gesundheit über alles. The question in life is what's über alles? What is above everything? That's the question that animates the human being. What is my highest value? Safety and health is one of them for the left. That's why safe spaces. Hurt feelings. We don't want hurt feelings. You're a parent. How do you deal with this? I've gotten a lot more. I also have another open letter from the head of immunology and virology at Tel Aviv University on the shame of his fellow professors and doctors.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. China has built the largest DNA database in the world, and it's only growing. This should concern all of us. That's because China could use this information in the future, perhaps, for example, to build bioweapons targeting specific ethnic groups. Given this background, common sense dictates that Americans shouldn't be storing their DNA or other personal information with Chinese-linked firms. Quite sensibly, after getting an FBI briefing about the firm's connections to China, the Los Angeles County Sheriff notified the county that his office wouldn't work with Fulgent. That's the genetics firm LA County hired for mandatory COVID testing and registration. Fulgent even admits in a public disclaimer it stores information outside the United States, where data privacy protections may not be as secure. I'll bet. What's alarming is how many others have chosen to work with Fulgent. The question is why.
Publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
America, if anybody wants it. But the answer is, yeah, I wish I had thought about ordering 500 million pills 2 months ago before COVID hit here.
But we're nearly 2 years into this pandemic. You're a year into the presidency. Empty shelves and no test kits in some places, 3 days before Christmas when it's so important. Is that good enough?
No, nothing's been good enough. But look where we are. When last Christmas we were in a situation where we had significantly fewer people vaccinated. Emergency rooms were filled.
Well, Mr. President, yes, I would have to agree with you on that. For once, there's something you and I agree on. Nothing has been good enough.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
We understand that a plane has crashed into...
The people who knocked these buildings us soon.
Biggest and most costly manhunt in U.S. history.
United States killed Osama bin Laden.
There are reports surfacing that Al-Qaeda has placed a $50,000 US bounty on the heads of any U.S. Navy SEALs.
Nobody's going to survive that. There's nobody in that.
This is the single largest loss of life in Afghanistan in a single incident.
Most of them are U.S. Navy SEALs.
We discovered bullets in the bodies of the Navy SEALs. The military threw them away.
More likely than not, that supports a shootout on board.
Anybody out there, we have a fallen angel.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Prager here. This article in Politico puts it very well by this lifelong progressive red diaper baby mother in Oakland. And she basically puts it this way: I decided that I love my child more than I love leftism. And that's it. You can't love them both equally. One will prevail over the other. You cannot love leftism and do good for your child. You can love your child. Feelings are feelings. There is an inherent contradiction between obedience to the left and helping your child. That's it. You can't do both. That's the profundity of this open statement or open letter by an Oakland mother. What people have accepted in the name of health, the hurting of children for no good reason. It isn't even a matter of let's weigh pros and cons. There were no pros to closing schools. Get it? None. It wasn't a tough call. Sweden is the proof. They were open all of 2021 for children under 16. Nobody died. Nobody. No teacher, no child. The weakening of the present generation, the wimps that have been produced, the post-war generation has produced wimps. We went from this courageous generation of World War II to weaklings. That's how fast values can die. We are living with weaklings. No generation would have closed its schools before this one. None. There's a virus going around, and it's not affecting kids. And I'm going to stop them from going to school. I'm going to stop them from playing with kids. I'm not going to allow them to see a human face for 2 years. I'm going to mask 2-year-olds on airplanes. Do you understand the anti-child policies that have taken place? And half of this country accepts it? They're called Democrats. If you're a Democrat, you accept the abuse of children. You do. You can fool yourself. Oh, I love children. I'm sure you do. I didn't say you don't love children. People abuse those they love as a regular feature of human life. Democrats hurt children, period. If you stay a Democrat, you are involved in the deliberate hurting of children. Okay? That's the point. It is undeniable. Undeniable. And it's true all over the West. My two favorite countries did it. Israel did it. I don't spare anybody this critique. I began reading to you in the previous hour one. Something else I will have to put up in the on my website. The head of the Department of Microbiology and Immunology at Tel Aviv University. There is no country except the U.S. more medically, technologically advanced than Israel. Given its small number, it's incredible. So if you are the head of microbiology and immunology at Tel Aviv University, you're big. And he has an open letter. I saw it in Hebrew and I saw it in English. Ministry of Health, it's time to admit failure. You refuse to admit that the infection comes in waves that fade by themselves. You refuse to admit that mass testing is ineffective. You refuse to admit that recovery is more protective than a vaccine. Wow. Yeah. See my column on that a few months ago. I am better protected than those of you with a vaccine because I had COVID. Doesn't mean I'll never die, even from COVID. There are no assurances in life. But there are things that are more likely than others. You insisted on ignoring the fact that the disease is dozens of times more dangerous for risk groups and older adults than for young people who are not in risk groups. You refuse to adopt the Barrington, it's called the Great Barrington Declaration signed by more than 60,000 scientists. You chose to ridicule, slander, distort, and discredit them. This is a guy writing to his fellow scientists in Israel. All good comes from outliers. Professor Ehud Kimron is such a man. ReliefFactor.com is where you should head if you have muscle or joint pain. You try it for 3 weeks. If it doesn't work in 3 weeks, the makers of the product say it probably won't work. Cancel your order. So they give you a 3-week price of $19.95. I can't understand why you wouldn't try it. I take it whenever I have muscle or joint pain. That's ReliefFactor.com, 800-500-8384.
Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
The hard infrastructure bill that you helped pass, it meant a lot in terms of what it's going to get done, but it also meant a lot in the politics of getting Build Back Better killed. Can you explain that to people?
Yeah, I mean, initially the Democrats knew, the poll data was clear, what was popular was hard infrastructure, deteriorating roads, bridges, and expand broadband. That was the popular part. And so I liked the approach in the Senate of putting together a bipartisan group. The president ended up agreeing with that to deal with the popular part of it, which I described as the sugar, leaving the Democrats to see if they could pass the spinach. And as we ended the year, it looks to me like they couldn't swallow the spinach. Now, I know Schumer said last night on a call he's not giving up. I don't expect him to. But the worst of BBB, it appears to me, is dead.
It does to me as well, and congratulations on that. It was great strategery, as former President Bush liked to say. I want to turn to senators. They have different career paths. Some are looking down the street at 1600, and some are looking at Mitch McConnell and want to be leaders someday. John Thune's actually been in both positions. I read a story that got me upset that John Thune might be thinking of retiring. How do you say it ain't so, Joe, in South Dakota, Leader McConnell?
Well, John Thune is an outstanding senator. He's done a great job as whip, which is our number 2 position in the Senate. It would be a real setback for the country and for our party if he retires, and I certainly hope he won't.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. China has built the largest DNA database in the world, and it's only growing. This should concern all of us. That's because China could use this information in the future, perhaps, for example, to build bioweapons targeting specific ethnic groups. Given this background, common sense dictates that Americans shouldn't be storing their DNA or other personal information with Chinese-linked firms. Quite sensibly, after getting an FBI briefing about the firm's connections to China, the Los Angeles County Sheriff notified the county that his office wouldn't work with Fulgent. That's the genetics firm LA County hired for mandatory COVID testing and registration. Fulgent even admits in a public disclaimer it stores information outside the United States, where data privacy protections may not be as secure. I'll bet. What's alarming is how many others have chosen to work with Fulgent. The question is why.
Hi, everybody. Dennis Prager here. I read to you 2 huge things. 1-8-PRAGER-776. Let me just finish from this, the head of virology and microbiology, of immunology and microbiology, Tel Aviv University. It's translated into English, so I'm going to put it up. But I checked to see the Hebrew original because I have to verify that this exists, and it's there. And he is who he is, who it says he is. Instead of the right programs and people, you have chosen professionals who lack relevant training for pandemic management. You have not set up an effective system for reporting side effects for the vaccines. This is a j'accuse. Émile Zola in France, the famous Dreyfus trial, where they accused a Jewish French officer of being a traitor, and it was all manufactured because of anti-Semitism in France. And Émile Zola, not a Jew, wrote j'accuse, I accuse. Again, it's the outlier who did good. This professor is an outlier. The herd of scientists, the herd of doctors. Look, life consists of either confronting painful truths or denying them. The purpose of pain is to alert you, right? That is why the body has pain. If you didn't have pain, you wouldn't remove your hand from a stove, a hot stove. Pain serves an incredibly important purpose. We have the ability to avoid pain in the non-physical arena by denying it or ignoring it. So you can ignore what teachers are doing to children, what the medical profession has done to Americans. You can deny it. And half of Americans do. But it doesn't mean you don't get burned. That's the point. That's why it's important to confront painful truths. Whether or not you acknowledge them, they will still cause the damage that is creating the pain. Teachers and doctors are damaging this country. Not all. Many, maybe most. It's incredible, I agree. And it's not just true in America. We have not raised a courageous, truth-oriented, serious generation. We've created spoiled brats who then become doctors and politicians and a whole host of other things. You have not set up an effective system for reporting side effects from the vaccines, and reports on side effects have even been deleted from your Facebook page. Doctors avoid linking side effects to the vaccine lest you persecute them as you did to some of your colleagues. Yes. You have ignored many reports of changes in menstrual intensity and menstrual cycle times. You hid data that allows for objective and proper research. You chose to publish non-objective articles together with senior Pfizer executives on the effectiveness and safety of vaccines. However, from the heights of your hubris, you have also ignored the fact that in the end the truth will be revealed, and it begins to be revealed. The truth is that you have brought the public's trust in you to an unprecedented low. God, is that true? I have never had contempt for the medical profession. Never. I never had contempt for the CDC. Never. Never occurred to me. I do now. This is the head of immunology and microbiology, Tel Aviv University, to his colleagues. The truth is that you have brought the public's trust in you to an unprecedented low, and you have eroded your status as a source of authority. That's right. The truth is that you have burned hundreds of billions of shekels to no avail. Yep, that's right. Tens of billions of dollars. That's right. For publishing intimidation, for ineffective tests, for destructive lockdowns, and for disrupting the routine of life in the last 2 years. You have destroyed the education of our children and their future. You made children feel guilty, scared, smoke, drink, get addicted, drop out, and quarrel, as school principals around the country attest. You have harmed livelihoods, the economy, human rights, mental health, and physical health. You slandered colleagues who did not surrender to you. You turned the people against each other, divided society, and polarized the discourse. You branded without any scientific basis people who chose not to get vaccinated as enemies of the public and as spreaders of disease. You promote in an unprecedented way a draconian policy of discrimination, denial of rights, and selection of people, including children, for their medical choice. A selection that lacks any epidemiological justification. When you compare the destructive policies you are pursuing with the sane policies of some other countries, you can clearly see that the destruction you have caused has only added victims beyond the vulnerable to the virus. The economy you ruined, the unemployed you caused, and the children whose education you destroyed, they are the surplus victims as a result of your own actions only. There is currently no medical emergency, but you have been cultivating such a condition for 2 years now because of lust for power, budgets, and control. The only emergency now is that you still set policies and hold huge budgets for propaganda and psychological engineering instead of directing them to strengthen the healthcare system. The emergency must stop. Professor Ehud Kimron, head of the Department of Microbiology and Immunology at Tel Aviv University. The letter, the accusation is exactly appropriate to the United States of America.
Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Man, I miss my father, and I want him to be here with me, but he's not.
We all had something in common. A lot of us were miserable. We had no fathers in our lives.
This is how I began the life of crime. I desired to have a father who would tell me that what I did was wrong.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Washington Post reported in 2019, Joe Biden said in the 1970s, I do not buy the concept popular in the 60s, which said we have suppressed the black man for 300 years and the white man is now far ahead in the race for everything our society offers. In order to even the score, we must now give the black man a head start or even hold the white man back to even the race. I don't buy that. Joe Biden, Delaware Weekly newspaper, 1975. Joe Biden will say anything to get elected. I have no idea what the man believes other than in Joe Biden and enriching his family. Natasha in Beverly Hills, California. Hello.
Hi, Dennis.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
So nice to hear your voice. We adore you. I love you. My family loves you. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
I personally have learned a lot from you over the years, and I really appreciate you every single day. I wanted to bring up something. I'm in the Beverly Hills school district, and we have a small district. I don't know if you know much about it, but they unfortunately are following the Los Angeles County health guidelines. And on top of that, they're becoming extremely more restrictive on even what LA County is recommending. so to speak. They just started back this week on Monday after a 2.5-week winter break, and they decided to make our kids wear masks outside during PE, just, anytime that they are outside on campus. And this goes for the high school, the middle school, and the elementary schools. So we fortunately have a large conservative community here, and a lot of us are standing strong.
What are you doing
against this tyrannical?
Tell your kid not to wear the mask. Let them throw the kids out of the school. They shouldn't. They should not wear masks outdoors. They shouldn't wear them indoors, but they should certainly not outdoors.
Exactly.
If we don't violate their evil, the evil wins.
And that's what's happening. What we're doing right now, we have a petition as well as a GoFundMe page. It's called BHUSC Parents for Choice. We're raising funds. We have sought counsel already, and we are taking those steps to move forward. However, it's a daily battle every day, and our
I
kids
promise
come
you.
home every
I
day.
promise you, if more than half the kids did not wear masks during recess, that you would prevail. There is no other option. They're scared of losing kids because then they lose money. They care more about money. No, they're more scared than anything else. The health authorities of the United States of America should all resign. They have hurt this country horribly.